we encounter the Great House Harkonnen at the very beginning of the Dune Chronicles. And this first meeting is anything but pleasant. If all of Frank Herbert's characters are, to some extent, ambiguous, then in the house of the siridar-baron Vladimir we face absolute evil. A disfigured appearance and immoral tendencies strictly condemned in the United States of the 1950s and 1960s formed a portrait of the main antagonist of the first book. Gradually, other traits of this universally hated house come to light. Greed, cruelty, treachery, and the neglect of family ties. Moreover, even after death, once learning of his blood ties to the hated enemies, Baron Vladimir continues a vendetta that lasts many centuries. Today, we will step slightly away from the strict canon and once again turn to the prequels written by Brian Herbert and Kevin J. Anderson in order to trace the origins of this enduring blood feud. No hatred arises from nothing. Yes, the books of Kevin and Brian lack philosophical depth and contain many inconsistencies, but the path taken by House Harkonnen in their telling could very well have been part of Frank Herbert's original intention. Why? Because how many clearly and unambiguously evil characters do we really see in the Dune Chronicles? Or might there be a reason behind the madness that engulfed an entire great house? It is assumed that the roots of the surname Harkonnen lie in Finland of the 20th century. No one claims descent from Homer's heroes, simply Finns, simply Old Earth, which, at the beginning of this story, is still populated. Yet, the planet is now ruled by thinking machines governed by the global mind Omnius. 1100 years earlier, a group of revolution-minded young people destroyed the administrative and political system of the old empire. It took only a short time before 3 progressive reformers became tyrants. Worse, intoxicated by power and yearning to possess it forever, they placed their brains into mechanical bodies. With the rise of the Titans, the remnants of the old empire split into 2 opposing factions. Distant worlds rejected the new regime and united into the League of Nobles under a viceroy. The center of resistance to the Titans and later to Omnius became Salusa Secundus. A fragile balance held for more than 1,000 years, supported in part by the slow speed of interstellar travel. The free humanity was ruled by the League Parliament, formerly headed by the Viceroy. At the start of the story, this position belonged to Mannion Butler the Elder. The Harkonnen family held a respectable and influential role within this structure, controlling the mining industry on the planet Hagal and conducting successful trade. The Harkonnens wielded significant influence in the League Parliament. The first major misfortune struck the esteemed family when its head, Ulf Harkonnen, his wife, and their young son Piers were caught by Cymex above Caladan. The famed Holtzman shields could not protect the planet from machines controlled by human brains instead of gel circuitry. Ulf and Katarina were killed, and the traces of Piers, thrown by his parents toward the planet's surface, were lost in history. This could have been the end, but the Harkonnens had another son. He was taken in by the equally influential Tantor family, who were childless at the time. Xavier Harkonnen grew up in love and comfort on the capital planet Salusa Secundus. Xavier might have lived a long life as a powerful noble had it not been for his close association with the Butler family. As fate would have it, Xavier fell in love with Serena, the Viceroy's eldest daughter, who was obsessed with the idea of freeing humanity from the oppression of thinking machines. Inspired by her fervor, the young Harkonnen chose a military career and joined the League Army. Viceroy Butler greatly valued the young officer and approved his marriage to Serena, but she, unaware of her pregnancy, secretly escaped to rescue the machine-controlled Giri Prime and was captured. Thus, the love between Xavier Harkonnen and Serena Butler became the near-direct cause of the devastating large-scale war. Erasmus, the robot in whose captivity Serena gave birth to Xavier's son, killed the one-year-old child and provoked an uprising on old Earth. Serena managed to escape with the help of Vorian Atreides and returned to Salusa Secundus. But Vorian, the son of the Titan Agamemnon, was always a man who sowed both good and evil with equal ease. Together with Serena, he brought from the Synchronized Empire a man named Iblis Ginjo, the supposed leader of the rebellion. Yet the uprising itself had been brutally crushed, and humanity exterminated. The League of Nobles eagerly welcomed the cunning Ginjo, who ascribed to himself most of the credit for saving Serena. Xavier, having believed Serena dead, had already married her younger sister Okta. Their marriage produced 3 daughters. The youngest, Vandra, would eventually become the mother of the first Corrino emperor. But for now, Serena Butler's jihad was only beginning. Xavier Harkonnen and Vorian Atreides became friends, and later led the jihad army. It was a strong alliance. The cunning Vorian and uncompromisingly honest Xavier complemented each other perfectly. But as the years passed, neither side could gain a decisive advantage in the war. Humans died by the millions, while the thinking machines possessed unlimited capacity for regeneration. The corrupt Iblis Ginjo profited handsomely from the chaos of the jihad, but his greed and lust for power knew no limits. Xavier Harkonnen made the fatal mistake of interfering with the affairs of the Great Patriarch and exposing his organ-harvesting schemes. True to his nature as a military man, Xavier acted directly and honorably. He sent a report only to his closest friend, Vorian Atreides, thereby putting an end to Ginjo's ambitions. Unfortunately, eliminating humanity's hidden enemy cost Xavier his life. Atreides, however, concealed the truth for political reasons, and thus the Harkonnen name was stained with disgrace. Quentin Uygar, who married Vandra Harkonnen, adopted the surname Butler through his wife's maternal line. Quentin and Vandra had 3 sons. All of them began their military careers in the Jihad army, following their father's example. The eldest, Phaikon, would later become the Corrino emperor. The middle son, Rykov, died during the epidemic of Omnius' scourge on Paramantir, leaving behind a terrible legacy. His daughter Rhaena survived but lost her sanity and went on to lead the barbaric Butlerian movement. Quentin loved these 2 sons and raised them according to his own distorted worldview. The youngest son of Vandra and Quentin, Abulurd, was effectively raised by Vorian Atreides, who knew the truth about the heroism of Xavier Harkonnen. Despite his family's disapproval, Abulurd took his true name, Harkonnen. It almost seemed as though, from that moment on, all the misfortunes of the universe fell upon him. Abulurd served honorably in the Jihad army, earning a reputation as a talented commander. Vorian Atreides had promised Abulurd that, after the final victory over Omnius, he would restore the good name of his grandfather Xavier. However, Abulurd, unsurprisingly, turned out to be too humane. Vorian Atreides, raised by machines, saw collateral damage as a normal part of war. But Abulurd Harkonnen eventually could not bear it. During the Battle of Corrin, he deactivated the weapons of his ships so that Atreides would not be able to destroy the bridge of Hretgir, the shield of human slave ships placed in orbit by the robots to protect Corrin from the Jihad fleet. Due to the illogical actions of the robot Erasmus, the Jihad army still managed to seize Corrin and finally destroy the Synchronized Empire. But Vorian Atreides did not forgive Abulurd Harkonnen for his actions and denounced him as a traitor before the entire League of Nobles. Phaikon Butler became emperor, while his younger brother Abulurd was exiled to the distant and harsh planet Lankiveil and stripped of all privileges. Vorian Atreides, the celebrated hero of the Jihad, ensured that the deeds of the Harkonnens were erased from human memory. Naturally, he broke his promise to clear Xavier's name. After all, why keep such a promise now? The Harkonnen family managed to survive on Lankyvale, but the wound inflicted by Vorian Atreides' betrayal continued to poison the souls of Abulurd's descendants. The strongest desire to avenge the wrong, restore the family's honor, and reclaim the rightful status of House Harkonnen burned in the hearts of Abulurd's eldest great-grandchildren. Valia and Griffin Harkonnen swore to destroy Atreides at any cost. They nurtured this dream since childhood and trained tirelessly to achieve it. The siblings clearly defined the roles each of them would take in order to carry out their plan. Griffin Harkonnen grew into a talented politician and a capable administrator. He sought to represent Lankyvale in the Landsraad League, strengthening the position of this remote world within the Imperium. He also attempted to establish a stable trade in the planet's only valuable resource, whale fur. Even then, Griffin understood that one could build a fortune on this business. Naturally, this path was also full of setbacks, but all obstacles might have been overcome if not for his sister Valia. Griffin and Valia were very close, and although Griffin gradually realized that killing Vorian Atreides would not restore the former greatness of their house, he ultimately obeyed his sister without question. Valia learned that the betrayer of their ancestors was still alive and in good health. Unable to go after him herself, she sent her brothers in pursuit. Even after abandoning all his affairs and heading out to track down Atreides, Griffin still had a chance to turn back, but fate carried Vorian, and then Griffin, to the barren Arrakis, the source of spice and countless misfortunes. The young Harkonnen succeeded in finding his enemy and even challenged him to a duel. Moreover, Griffin won that duel, but the reasonable and honorable young man refused to kill Atreides, thereby signing his own death sentence. At that time, Vorian was being hunted by his genetic brother and sister, transformed into humanoid cyborgs by Titan Juno. Griffin Harkonnen became the victim of yet another encounter between the twisted Atreides siblings. And with his death, the only hope for the restoration of House Harkonnen vanished. Naturally, when the Harkonnens on Lankyvale received a package containing Griffin's corpse and the confused explanation of their sworn enemy, no one believed Vorian. This horrific event only deepened the hatred. When Valia Harkonnen encountered Arlette of the Rossack Sisterhood on Lankyvale, she immediately recognized the opportunity. She traveled to Rossack as an acolyte and quickly earned the approval of Reverend Mother Raquella Berto Anirul. If only she had known what kind of person she was tying her family's hopes to. Valia progressed rapidly through her training and soon became a full sister. Reverend Mother Raquella even entrusted her with her most terrible secret: computers containing an enormous database of genetic information. It must be noted that this secret was exceptionally dangerous in an age when fanatical Butlerian zealots roamed the galaxy. Raquella believed that Valia Harkonnen's only flaw as a sister of the Order was her unwavering loyalty to House Harkonnen. However, as time would show, it was far better to act for the good of the family than to behave as Raquella's own granddaughter Dorothea did. Once Dorothea became the first Reverend Mother after Raquella, she immediately betrayed both the Order and her grandmother. Valia would come to regret not taking poison at the same time as Dorothea. Yet the secret rebirth of the Sisterhood on Wallach 9 became another step on her path toward leading the Order. Having survived the poison and becoming a Reverend Mother without outside assistance, Valia Harkonnen returned to the Sisterhood and brought her younger sister with her. Both of them were driven by a desire for vengeance against Atreides, and to that end, they served the Sisterhood with tireless dedication. After meticulously crafting her secret plan, Reverend Mother Valia secured permission to be sent to Gnaz to train as a swordmaster. Valia Harkonnen achieved more than her unfortunate noble brother ever could. She became Raquella's successor, forcing Dorothea to commit suicide using the voice. Without realizing it, she offered the first Atreides on the altar of her hatred. From that moment, Reverend Mother Valia Harkonnen became the sole leader of the Sisterhood. Under her rule, the Bene Gesserit Order was born, an order that would one day make the entire galaxy kneel. And yes, Valia Harkonnen fought Vorian Atreides. Their duel was interrupted and the enemy escaped, but his ship later exploded. Atreides survived, though Reverend Mother Valia never learned this. Believing her task complete, she returned to leading the Order, while the elder great-grandchildren of the disgraced Abulurd Harkonnen followed the sincere path of vengeance. The younger ones, under Valia's guidance, stepped onto a far more crooked road. Tula Harkonnen, under her sister's influence, married Ori Atreides, a descendant of Vorian. She killed him on their wedding night, creating a blood feud with his brother Willem. Thula later developed genuine sympathy for the enemy family but dared not disobey her sister. Her collection included a duel with Willem, the birth of a child from Ori Atreides, and her return to the Bene Gesserit. The Sisterhood held its adepts firmly, even without a fanatical mother superior like Valia. The fourth great-grandchild of Abulurd Harkonnen, Denvis, eventually fulfilled the second dream of Valia and Griffin. He secured a place in the Landsraad, though only as a minor house. Still, it was a tangible victory. Denvis soon immersed himself in court intrigues, which ultimately brought him into conflict with Willem Atreides. In that struggle, he employed the very underhanded tactics that would later make House Harkonnen infamous. Together with his cousin Gerhard, Denvis attempted to frame Willem, risking his own life. In the end, the cunning cousin took Denvis's seat in the Landsraad, believing that Denvis would never awaken from his coma. However, Denvis recovered and killed his cousin, reclaiming his position. Across 10,000 years, the Harkonnen family sank deeper and deeper into madness, poisoned by their hatred of Vorian Atreides and his descendants. They utterly rejected honor and nobility. Now, fear and betrayal rule their house. Through fear, the Harkonnens govern their planets and their armies, and the murder of one's own relatives has become routine practice. Their path upward proved long. Very long. For nearly 10 centuries, the house remained classified as a minor house. The deeds of Xavier and Abulurd had long since vanished from human memory, as had their true lineage. Only the feud with the Atreides endured. Even among circles close to the imperial family, the Harkonnens were regarded as upstarts. Human memory is short, and the deep connection between the Harkonnens, the Atreides, and the Corrino line survived only in the archives of the Bene Gesserit. House Harkonnen achieved Great House status under Dimitri, the father of the lost Baron. His skillful manipulations on the trade markets allowed the family to accumulate great wealth and rise to prominence. By that time, the family had long since left Lankyvale. Their primary fief had become Giri Prime. The planet likely possessed vast natural resources, even during the age of the League of Nobles. Omnius would not have tried to seize it so early for no reason. The Harkonnens managed the world much like the thinking machines once did, which carries a certain irony of fate. During Baron Dimitri's rule, Giri Prime had become a world with a heavily polluted environment. Nearly its entire surface was covered with heavy industry facilities. The planet's own mineral resources had been depleted long before, but the Harkonnens could already afford to import whatever they needed from elsewhere. The population lived in near slavery, surviving in misery. The only way to escape the poisoned world was to join the Harkonnen army, a path many considered acceptable, which ensured the Great House possessed strong forces. Baron Dimitri had 3 sons, Vladimir from his first wife and Maratin and Abulurd from his second. He did not take much responsibility for Vladimir's upbringing. The middle son was born intellectually disabled and died at the age of 28. The youngest son was the one on whom Dmitri placed his greatest hopes. And although the Baron achieved impressive success in elevating his house, he softened in his old age and even sought to quell the feud with House Atreides. His youngest son, however, turned out to be gentle and incapable of ruling. When Dmitri, nearing the end of his life, received the right to act as Siridar governor of Arrakis, he appointed Abulurd and made a grave mistake. It is unlikely that any offspring of the Great House Harkonnen could expect parental affection, so Baron Vladimir's problems certainly do not stem from childhood. After his father's death, he inherited the family's empire. Through successful trade operations and masterful court intrigues, Vladimir greatly multiplied the wealth and power of his house. Ruthless austerity in infrastructure and wages, and oppression of local populations, and the Harkonnens were already earning enormous profits from Arrakis. This temporary fief had been taken by Vladimir from his younger brother, who had proved utterly incompetent. However, there was an episode in Vladimir Harkonnen's life that effectively deprived the Great House of heirs. It was to his misfortune that the Bene Gesserit Sisterhood turned its full attention toward him. There is irony in this. After all, the Sisterhood in its familiar form was created by Vladimir's distant ancestor, Valia Harkonnen. The Bene Gesserit forced the young Vladimir to conceive a child with sister Gaius Helen Mohiam. This incident humiliated the proud Baron. His attempt to resist the Sisterhood's will brought upon him their terrible revenge. Mohiam infected him with an incurable disease that disfigured his body and warped his mind. Already prone to the family's tendency toward madness, Vladimir developed perverse impulses. These gifts from the Bene Gesserit rendered him completely incapable of producing an heir. All his unspent energy Vladimir Harkonnen poured into the ancient feud with the Great House Atreides, choosing to ally with the Emperor, who was frightened by the rise of Leto I. He lost his first major gamble. The treacherous Emperor was the one to lose his throne, while the raging Baron met physical death at the hands of his own granddaughter. Even had he known of this kinship beforehand, it likely would not have saved him. Yet even beyond the veil of death, Vladimir Harkonnen did not find peace. Consumed by ancient hatred, he managed through cunning to seize control of the mind of the granddaughter who had slain his body. Through her hands and her damaged mind, he continued to carry out his vengeance, until he encountered a new obstacle, and once again it was his own blood that stood in his way. The old Baron vastly underestimated his great-grandchildren, Ghanima and Leto II Atreides. Showing the ruthless brilliance of true Harkonnens, the twins outwitted the aunt he controlled, forcing her to take life. And what of the failed ruler of Arrakis, Abulurd Harkonnen? He was not as ferocious as his elder brother, not as intelligent as his father, and not as noble as their ancient forebears. Unable to manage his Siridar fief, Abulurd voluntarily retreated to Lankyvale. He took his wife's surname, Rabban, along with her family's governance of the harsh planet, but he failed there as well, beginning with the upbringing of his own children. His elder son, Glossu Rabban, grew into a man both pathologically cruel and lacking intelligence. His actions horrified not only his parents but also his uncle Vladimir, who had initially considered him an heir. After committing numerous senseless acts of sadism, Glossu lost the favor of the all-powerful Baron. Vladimir never gave him the family name. Glossu's parents disowned him entirely and had a second son. By Vladimir's command, Glossu Rabban abducted his younger brother. At that time, he still did not know that Feyd-Rautha had already been chosen as the new Baron's successor. Glossu feared his uncle, at least, but felt no attachment to the rest of the family. His hands were stained with the blood of his own father and grandfather, crimes that earned him the name the Beast. While Vladimir Harkonnen raised the new heir, Glossu Rabban governed Arrakis. His tyranny left lasting scars on the memories of the Fremen and the planet's inhabitants. When Muad'Dib sparked a revolution, the fury of the people erupted with volcanic force. They were eager to avenge themselves upon the hated Siridar governor, who had returned to his post after the fall of the Atreides. In the flames of this uprising, Glossu Rabban perished, killed by Paul's Fedaykin fighters. Unlike his elder brother, Feyd-Rautha proved intelligent, perceptive, moderately cunning, and appropriately ruthless. He was exactly the sort of heir Vladimir Harkonnen desired. Feyd-Rautha's attempt to kill his uncle in order to hasten his own rise pleased the old baron more than it angered him. There was a true head of Great House Harkonnen, but these ambitions were never realized. The Fremen uprising led by Paul Muad'Dib erased all of Vladimir's careful designs. Feyd-Rautha Harkonnen died in combat, recklessly challenging Paul himself. Thus the direct line of House Harkonnen came to a final end. Strange as it may seem, the story of House Harkonnen is not over. Yes, the Great House itself ceased to exist under the Atreides Empire, a fate shared by many other great houses. The governance of Giri Prime was handed over to the former slave Gurney Halleck, who renamed the planet Gamma. Industry was dismantled, nature restored, and every trace of Harkonnen presence erased. Yet, one must not forget that the greatest tyrants of the Dune universe were the biological grandson and great-grandson of Vladimir Harkonnen. The most ruthless and ambitious daughter of the Bene Gesserit, Lady Jessica, was his own daughter. The genetic program of the Sisterhood, launched long ago by Mother Superior Valia Harkonnen, had taken strange turns indeed. All of Valia Harkonnen's life had been devoted to vengeance against the Atreides. Perhaps her Bene Gesserit successors finally carried out her dream. Their precisely calculated breeding programs first intertwined the genes of ancient enemies and then produced the universe's most powerful tyrants. And the infusion of the older Harkonnen line, the Carino blood, led to the creation of humans invisible to the gift of prescience. But every coin has at least two sides. What may appear as the triumph of Valia Harkonnen's selective program may just as easily be seen as its downfall. The Harkonnen genetic line became tightly interwoven with that of Vorian Atreides, who in ancient times had betrayed love and friendship. In the new age after the death of the God Emperor Leto II, people feared even to whisper his name. The ancestral name Atreides was ultimately erased from history, just as the name Harkonnen had been. Perhaps this is the most logical conclusion to many thousands of years of betrayals and blood feuds. And what do you think? And that's all for now. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like it, subscribe to the channel, and click the bell icon. Your support is the best reward. Thank you for watching, see you soon, goodbye.